Hello, everyone. This is Crash Talk 3D. We're back online again. To our viewers, hello, and we have a great guest in store for you all to speak to her about her adventure and tell us about her foundation and where she's at now. As long on my kick side here, Michael Gersh. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
So, everyone here, as far as we talk about Crash Talk 3D on drug, distracted driving and hearing our people in their stories, this is a platform that you may talk about as well as tell us where your adventures are taking you from here on. Right now, I'm going to let Mr. Michael Gersh introduce our guest speaker of this week and go right ahead, Mr. Michael.
See, and here's another guest that you have met personally that I have
Oh,
not, right? So I'm 0 for 2 on this.
you want to
Uh,
know where it was at? The
where?
ladies' room.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't do that at all. So yeah, we'll just leave it at that. All right. So let's welcome Tammy Gweedo McGee. She founded the Guido Memorial Foundation to educate new teenage drivers and their parents on the dangers of destructive driving decisions. Unfortunately, her son Connor was killed in a car crash, which we'll talk about a little bit more in terms of why she became an advocate on October 26, 2019. And she's also had 5 bills passed in Virginia about how to, or not really how to, but for traffic safety. And thank you so much for joining us, Tammy. You are a wonderful person for everything you've done to make our roads safer.
Oh, well, thank you both for having me. I certainly am thrilled to be here. As much as I wish it wasn't me, it is. But we're going to do the best we can with the cards that we get dealt until I get to see him again.
Amen. Well, Miss Tammy, I'm going to have my first question, and just I know you've done many platforms of this, so this is probably going to never can say it's never easy still to talk about it, but just for our viewers out there, the ones that maybe perhaps don't know you, could you please tell us the what started and what led you to where you're at now, and definitely take the platform of whatever you need to say because to save lives, and I know that's mainly what we're all about here, but take it from here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I am going to share my baby with you.
Yes.
This is Connor. Connor was 16 and a half years old, living this living his dream life, 16 and a half years old in high school, the varsity goalie for the soccer team, traveling all over the country playing soccer, being scouted to play collegiately. He had a girlfriend, a great group of friends, and
Mm.
believe it or not, almost a 4.0 GPA as a dual sport athlete. So he was, of course, the love of my life. I have a daughter who was a senior, and my son was a junior, and
Okay.
that's what I always wanted. I was the mom that wanted the white picket fence and the house and the 2.5 kids, the national average, right?
Yes.
But everything changed for us October 26, 2019. Connor and Alexis had gone to the homecoming dance. And the last thing that I did was a little fun thing. Connor and I always had the I got you and you got me kind of thing. And
Hmm.
never did I know that would be the last time that I would see my son. But off to the dance he went with his date and his flowers and the pictures and the restaurant and all the fun things that are supposed to happen at a homecoming until the end of the dance. And a driver who had recently transferred to our school showed up driving. And he'd been driving every day for 4 weeks to and from school in a high performance BMW. And quite honestly, I don't think myself or anybody else thought twice about it. He was driving. So therefore, he must have a license because parents would never let you drive without a license. That unfortunately was not the case. And at the end of the dance that night, he pulled up and he yelled to Connor, "Come on, Connor, let's go to the party." Well, seemingly an innocent act to hop into a vehicle with someone that you don't really know that well, but you got to kind of know him in those last 4 weeks. And he'd been driving and people had seen it. And Connor hopped into the car and he yelled to his friend Logan and said, "Come on and go with us to the party. I mean, the party's only 1 mile down the road. What's the big deal and how you get there? We're all going to the same party." Well, as parents, we had discussed the dangers of what we know has been shoved down our throats forever. No drinking and driving, right? Candace Lightner, my hero, and changing the way a culture thinks about drinking and driving. And we talked about drugs. No drugs, no alcohol. Spend the night, get an Uber, call your parents, sleep on the sofa. We know you're a teenager. We know there's going to be influences, and we just want you to be safe. All the things that parenting we thought we needed to do. Well, when this driver showed up, he like, left the parking lot with skid marks at the school grounds, and they only had 1 mile to go, just one short mile. And in 500 yards, he reached speeds of 75 miles an hour in a 35 zone, twice the legal speed limit. And with that speed, lost control of the vehicle. He ran off the road, overcorrected, hit a tree, flipped the car, and he killed all three passengers. All three boys in the vehicle are gone. My baby's gone in the blink of an eye over something that was 100% preventable. And I think that is why I'm here. That is why I'm talking to you, because what happened to those three boys shouldn't have happened. It was 100% preventable. So we started the Guido Memorial Foundation, and we call it Guido because Cotter's last name was pronounced Guido or Guido. And on the soccer field, Cotter loved Guido. It was way to go, Guido. Good save, Guido, as he's flying through the air to stop the soccer balls from coming in the net. And we adopted Guido as an affectionate name of our foundation with an effort to not let this happen to anyone else, to do everything that I can to prevent the crash, right? Doesn't do any good after the fact. We want to get there before the crash, and preventing before the crash is really what our foundational message is about. And making sure that parents are involved, right? This isn't just a teenage thing. This is a partnership between parents and teenagers to make sure that both are involved and educated for the rules in your state for safe teen driving. So that's a little bit about me. And I again appreciate you so much for having us here today.
Well, thank you so very much. I think we lost LaDonna. I don't know if she's still here or not, but we're going to keep on going. She disappeared from the screen, but I don't want to stop in terms of what we're talking about because it's so important. As a son who lost his mom, and like Candace being the inspiration for me, I'm curious if the other families also are speaking out, became advocates like you as well.
So I would tell you that I've never heard from the driver's family.
Wow. Okay.
They never sent a card, a flower, showed up at the celebration of life. Not an apology, not anything. They acted like my son. My flesh and blood baby never existed. Logan, who was in the back seat, his parents have taken a athletic approach, I would say. His son, their son was a dual sport athlete as well. I think maybe more than two sports actually. And they do give out some scholarships to help teenagers in the athletic realm here in the Yorktown, Virginia area. But I think it was just that push for me that this was so preventable, that it didn't have to happen. You know, just like you, just like Candace, somebody's got to stand up and speak. And
Yes.
I decided it had to be me.
It's interesting because as I'm hearing you speak, I remember what my friends and how they drove in high school and how many close calls. And, you think you're just invincible at that
Yes.
age until something happens. And now, being an advocate, trying to prevent that from happening to other people. You're also a national speaker. When you go out and speak, what do you think is one of the most rewarding things for you now?
Guaranteed, the most rewarding thing is when 500 teenagers come down and hug me, right? That is just the most
Oh,
amazing feeling to have them come and say, I hear you. I don't want this to happen to myself, my brother, my sister, my friends. I'm going to speak up when I'm in a situation like this. I'm going to share that message. That is the absolute most rewarding. And, when you sit in an auditorium with, five, six, 800,000 teenagers, you don't get them all, right? And
right.
we knew teenagers are teenagers and they're having fun and they're chit-chatting. And we know we don't get them all. but I only need one. I need one who
Hmm.
doesn't wind up like Connor, one mother who doesn't wind up like me. And that one is going to talk to somebody else. And that somebody else is going to talk to somebody else. And that's how we get this message of safety and making sure that teenagers arrive alive every time they get behind the wheel.
Exactly right. And look who came back. LaDonna came back.
Here she is.
I did not. I just said I just had technical difficulty. I don't understand why, but I prepared everything, but I
Well,
apologize. But I'm back online.
well, you know how they say IT is only good when it works.
But am I coming in clear? Can y'all hear
Yes.
me okay?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Um, so tell us about how people can get in touch with you and how the foundation is doing. And I don't know if that was already this stated.
Nope.
Okay. All right.
So we are connorguido.com, and I'm going to spell that because it's a little tricky. It's ConnerGweedo. Guido being an affectionate name for my
Wonderful.
son that was gifted to him by his friends on the soccer field. Instead of Guido, he really preferred Guido. And so we decided to make the Guido Memorial Foundation in honor of Connor. But on top of that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, we also have an anonymous reporting system that we created because of our crash. If you see something, say
I like
something.org.
I like that.
100% anonymous. And that again, to go back to your previous question, Michael, that's another great thing that I get to hear and that's so rewarding when the teenagers say, okay, so how does this work? Can you show me what to do? And I pull up the phone and I show them, I'm like, look, you only have to click here and you tell me who, what, where, when. That's it. And then we take care of it.
Okay.
And you don't have to worry about being a rat or a snitch. And what we do know is
Okay.
that teenagers know so much that they don't tell anyone because they're afraid to.
Mhm.
Probably no different than when I was in high school, and probably
Mhm.
both of you as well. Nobody wants to be a rat or a snitch. And this website gives them that anonymity so that they can speak up without having to live with that regret. Because if they knew something today and they said nothing, and then tomorrow their friend is tragically killed in an automobile crash or some other type of a problem, but they didn't speak up. Can you imagine the guilt that they would live with? But they
Mhm.
don't have to anymore. That's why we did this website.
That's awesome. Can you tell me, you talked about the teens and their responses when you do presentations for parents. What's their response?
Um, Most commonly, I had no idea. That's
Okay.
that's really and I think that's the real message that, especially with a lot of the legislation that I've done, is to make sure that we're getting parents involved and we're making them
Mhm.
aware of their decisions and how they're going to be held accountable in the future. Because driving isn't up to the high school to teach your kid how to drive, and driving isn't up to the driving school. It is a partnership, and we should look at it that way because ultimately we all want the same thing. I mean, there's not a parent who's lost their child who would say, I wish I had. We
Mhm.
all say that.
Mhm.
I wish I had. I wish I would have. The hindsight's 2020, Monday morning quarterback. Don't do that. We're trying to get you involved before the crash. That's the solution, is before the crash.
All right. Proactive is key, to everything.
Well, the other thing that we've learned, and parents will tell me this all the time, is how impactful it is because it's not coming from the parent isn't it's not the teenager isn't hearing it from the parent, right? The teenager hears, oh, pick up your clothes, do your laundry, feed the cat, put the trash out. They hear all of these things and it's just in one ear and out the other. But when it comes to driving, somebody else who's telling that personal story is what's very impactful and motivational for those teenagers.
Yep, been through that as well as a speaker for so long in terms of that. Can you talk to us about your 5 bills? Because that's a huge accomplishment, especially
Yes.
working with politicians and government. So,
I
Well,
definitely want to hear that.
well, I even have more excitement because now it's
10?
eight.
Oh,
okay,
eight. Okay.
Eight.
all right, now you're just being
So
an
we just
overachiever, but whatever. It's
I know. Well,
that's
the
awesome.
governor just signed. Yeah, she
Okay,
just signed our three pieces
Yay.
of legislation this year. So We are very excited about it. We're very proud of the work that we do to keep teenagers safe and to hold people accountable who break the law. So all of the information is available on connorguido.com, but I'll give you a short little rundown. I don't want to take up too much time. But the first bill that I passed in 21 requires all Virginia public high schools now to require the presentation of a valid driver's license if your child wants to drive
Mm.
and park every day at the high school. Our driver was in the driver education program and still got a parking permit. So there's no way he had a driver's license, but he still got one because nobody checked. So now in Virginia, at least we know that if you're a teenager on driving on a Virginia public high school grounds, you should have had to present a valid driver's license in order to get that
Mhm.
parking permit.
I love
Um,
it.
it, yeah, it's common sense. I mean, these are just common sense. And unfortunately, things that just weren't there. And we'd love to see these in other states. We'd love to have
Yes.
people work with us to get Connor's laws in other states. In 2022, there was a 90-minute parent teen safe driving course that was on the books in Virginia, but it was only valid in District 8. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with the rest of Virginia and the rest of Virginia teenagers? So we asked them to take that bill statewide. And what it is, it's a 90-minute parent teen safe driving course. So what we
Okay.
want is the parent to come to the high school with their teenager, sit in the auditorium for 90 minutes, and learn about driving with their teenager beside them. Put your phone down, be present, and make sure that we're getting parents involved in teen driver safety education. So that was in 22. I took off 23 and 24, and we developed the anonymous website. Well, I didn't develop it because I'm not that smart. I had to pay somebody to do that. But 23 and 24 were definitely dedicated to if you see something, say something.org. And then in 25, we passed three pieces of legislation. One of them encourages 36 districts. Well, let me back up. In Virginia, there are 36 districts that do not offer behind the wheel as part of high school driver's education. Now we know there's a lot of states that don't have driver's education in the high school. It is
Right.
offered here in Virginia, but there's 36 of them that don't offer behind the wheel. So what are you supposed to do if you live in one of those 36 districts? You either let your child drive unlicensed because you don't
Mm-hmm.
have the money to send them to a third party driving school, or you have to pay to send them to a third party driving school. Well, that is so unfair to our lower income minority families who can't afford that. It's
Right.
completely disproportionately affecting our lower income minority families. And so we had asked for those 36 districts to get on board. So that was in 25. And then the two other pieces that I did in 25 are very, very similar but different, all in the same regard. And what these two pieces of legislation say is that if you know someone is driving unlicensed, if you know anyone is driving unlicensed and you allow that behavior to happen and you don't do anything to stop it, you don't call the police, you don't call a parent, you don't call the owner of the company, anyone, not just a teenager, if
Okay.
anyone is driving unlicensed. So it can be a restricted license. It can be an adult. It does not have to be a teenager. If that happens and they get into a crash, which causes death or injury, we can now hold you accountable and put you in jail with a class one misdemeanor
Okay.
because you didn't do anything to stop it. But the second piece of that legislation says specifically a teenager. So we wanted to cover both scenarios. We wanted a scenario, excuse me, getting all choked up here. We wanted to cover the scenario where, just like in our case, a parent allowed a teenager to drive unlicensed. But we wanted to go bigger and we wanted to make sure that we were clear that anyone who is driving unlicensed. So you could be working at FedEx and driving, your license revoked and you didn't tell anybody. So they didn't
Mm-hmm.
really know, but maybe your friends know. And they're like, you didn't supposed to be driving, but you need to speak up and say that now. That's what we want them to do. We want them to speak up and share that information so that we can make sure that everybody that's on our roadways is properly licensed.
That definitely needs to be in every state.
There's a lot of them that need to be in every state, girlfriend. And then this year, we came back and we passed three more. So Virginia Bill 720, what it does is if you're a teenager has to go to a third party driving school for driver education because you don't offer it in the high school. And they show up at a building. They go in and fill out the paperwork. Mom and dad drop you off. They leave because they got to go do their driving, right? When a teenager goes out and hops in a car, how do they know that that person who's driving them is licensed? How do you know?
Mm.
So this requires it's very similar. If you go to New York City and you get in a taxi cab, they have a placard and it shows the
Mhm.
picture and it shows that they're licensed. The same thing. We want clear communication to any student who hops in a vehicle with another adult that they don't know, that that's the right person that should be training you. Because what happens when third-party driving schools, and quite frankly, a lot of them are small mom and pop shops, right? They're not big, huge industries. And maybe Johnny, who's licensed to teach teenagers to drive for, your driving school is sick today, but Sally's there. And you go like, hey, Sally, go ahead and take out Tammy, even though you're not licensed. So we need to make sure that the person that's teaching you is the right person and the licensed person. So that placard goes in the vehicle so that it keeps our teenagers safe and aware of who they're riding with.
Okay, that's true.
And then the next bill that we passed, I know it's a lot. This one has
I
about
love
six
it.
different, well, it has about six different pieces to it. And what it does is it encourages and requires now the Virginia Department of Motor Vehicles to have a forward-facing system about third-party driving schools. So think about it this way. If you are in one of our 36 districts that don't offer behind the wheel and you've got to go find a driving school, where do you go? Well, I don't know. I only have one child. It's my first teenager. I don't have any idea where to send him to. You talk to other people. You don't know whether that school is a good school or a bad school. You don't know whether that school's ever had a sanction against it or not. You don't have any idea. So what we've done is we've asked DMV to make a forward-facing system where parents can go onto the DMV website and look up school ABC and see they've had zero infractions. But maybe school DEF has had two. Which one do you think you're going to choose once you have that information? So we really wanted transparency for our parents to make sure that these driver education schools are on the up and up and that we
Mhm.
communicate what's actually going on. Now, we're not going to divulge any investigative activity, right? We're not going to say what that infraction was, but we can very simply say they have done, or they may have had one, or maybe they've had two. And then from there, the parent can choose where they'd like to send their school. But the other thing that this bill does, again, it's like six different pieces. It also increases the waiting period. If you are a driving school instructor and have been convicted of a DUI, a DWI, or refusal to blow. So
Mm.
we increased that. Yeah. So we were strengthening those licensing restrictions and making sure that parents have some information about these driving schools before they select one. Um, then the last bill that I did, and this one, it's almost as near and dear to me as Connor's Law, which was the first one that I passed in 21. But this bill requires now both the state approved driver's education and 90 days supervised practice for first time drivers over 18. Because here's what's happening. If you knew that if you waited till 18, you only had to do one of them, they 16-year-olds are like, well, I'll just wait till 18 and then I'm driving unlicensed anyway.
That is
So
very true.
they were waiting until they're 18 because
Yeah.
it was easier, right? So now what we've done is really made the same requirements from age 16 to 21 in Virginia. If you're a first-time driver, you have to have both. We don't want people on our roads who have not been educated and have not done that 90-day driving period. So that's really exciting. We're
That
real
is
happy
exciting.
about that piece of legislation.
I love it. I mean, being a defensive driver instructor that I am I teach the classes, but that right there, because I have to admit, I have an 18-year-old and he's a new driver. But the difference here with me is because I'm an instructor, he had to be up under my wing for a while, for a
Right?
while. And so plus do what the DMV wanted him to do and take the classes and all that. But you're right. Some people, they low income families, they might can't afford the classes, the third parties, as you stated. And so what they'll do
Yes.
is they'll wait till they're 18
And then they're driving unlicensed anyway. Because the
Yes.
reality is, maybe mom and dad, maybe it's a single income family. They need you to go to work. You can go get a job at McDonald's or the grocery store, and you can bring money into the household, but they don't have the money to send you for that driving test because it's so expensive. And that's really what this was about. It was about equitable access to high quality caliber driver education for everyone.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a lot. There's 8 of them. I hard to believe I can remember them all.
Well,
I'm proud of you.
in a short time span too, which is incredible.
Well, and GHSA did recognize that work in 2024 with the Peter O'Rourke Award for our legislation. They couldn't believe I had 3 bills passed inside of 3 years, and here I am with 8 in 6 years.
That's
So.
awesome.
Well, what happened to Connor shouldn't have happened. What
True.
happened to all 3 of those boys shouldn't have happened. And if I don't speak up, who will? And I'm not willing to sit beside idly and let it happen to someone else when I can use the platforms that I have to help other people.
So true. Well, and that's a good question. I do have a good question. Being an advocate is stressful many times.
Mhm.
So how do you find balance in your life?
Well, it's a good thing you're asking me that and not my husband because he would tell you there isn't a whole lot of balance. Um, you know, realistically, so I was an accountant my whole life, sat behind a computer, bean counter. Nobody ever thought that I was a public speaker or could be. But I think what I tell everybody is that when you've gone through something this tragic, you have to retransform yourself. You to be able to get up every day and breathe, you have to you have to find a new part of Tammy. And that part came from me being able to use Connor in a way to help other people. And so it is really hard to balance that because I love what I do, right? Gave up accounting, don't need to ever go do that again. I'm doing what I love. I'm doing what I know saves people's lives. And so for me, I don't, yes, everybody needs a break. My brother's gonna come in town this weekend and we're gonna get together. So probably maybe won't do a whole lot of computer work, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But for me, I love what I do. So it's really not work, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I love being able to travel and speak with these teenagers. And really, the message for them is hope. That's what it is. I give them a message of hope that you don't have to wind up like Connor. You can speak up and save your peers. And that's what's really important is that message of hope because it does come out of the worst thing in the world for me and a tragedy. But I'll tell you, when I sit in those auditoriums and I ask them how many have already been in a crash, and 2/3 of them raise their hand, that's really sad.
Mhm.
And it's something
Mhm.
that it's something we can do something about.
Mhm.
Yes.
So we have about 3 or 4 minutes left on the clock. I know this is going pretty quickly. I wish we had more more to talk about. What were you said soccer was one of his sports. What was the other one?
Track.
Okay.
He ran hurdles.
Okay.
Oh,
He actually came home one day and he said, I'm gonna run hurdles." And I'm like, "Do you even know what hurdles are?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, let's go Google it."
You know,
And so
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say, so we YouTubed it and off he went and he started training and the season was different than soccer and it kept him athletically inclined the whole year and kept him busy and it certainly was another love of his.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous because I was a one sport athlete as a swimmer, and my GPA definitely wasn't any good. So I'm really jealous.
Uh, he was I think every mom would say it, but he was an amazing son and he should still be here and that's why I do this work.
Sure.
well, I think you're doing such a phenomenal job. If you haven't heard it enough, but keep doing what you're doing.
Well,
Before I close it out, is there anything else that you want the platform that you want to say that maybe we didn't ask you that you want anyone to know?
Well, I think what's important for everyone who's listening to this, who maybe didn't know or is just getting caught up on traffic safety and why it's really such a big problem, is what we ignore, what we excuse, and what we stay silent about. has life-changing consequences, and it can't be about driving. It has to be the time for all of us to speak up. This isn't one person's problem. It's not DMV's problem. It's not Department of Transportation. It is every single user, whether they are in a vehicle, a pedestrian, a bicyclist. It's everybody's responsibility. And losing 40,000 people a year is unacceptable. It just
Very.
is.
I totally agree with you. Well, Michael, before I say anything, is there anything else that you want to say, sir?
The one question I had was your focus has been on teens. As I get older and closer to 60, are there any things, initiatives you're doing for older drivers?
It's something that we're looking into, actually, because I think as you, I am also getting closer, right, each and every year. And the reality is it's hard to give that driving up. And I've got some experience with that personally with my mother and how hard it has to be to stop doing what you've always done, because we change. And it's really important for older drivers to recognize that fatalities that are caused by that age group is it's not any more acceptable than if it was a teenager. And again, it's everyone's responsibility.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Miss Tammy. I really appreciate once again that you've taken our request and being our next important guest. But until we meet again, to our audience out there, thank you for listening to Crash Talk 3D, where we want lives to be saved and drivers to be accountable. Again, until next week, bye.
Bye.